Alright, it's Antline Alpha, and welcome to Video Game Logic Explained, where we'll take a close look at seemingly random mechanics and design choices in video games, and overanalyze them until they make perfect sense. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at Bob-Omb Battlefield from Super Mario 64. Upon entering the level, it quickly becomes evident that Bob-Omb Battlefield is the remains of an ancient civilization once inhabited by early pioneers of technology. These pioneers specialized in cannons, pressure-release gates, indefinitely self-sustaining pulley elevators, and even flight. The elected leader of the civilization, who invested countless hours into the quality of these products, gained much wealth for his highly desired technology. Unfortunately, the leader of the tribe fell very ill after being bit by a Goomba carrying yellow fever. His final request before he died was that he be buried with all his wealth. The corners of his grave are marked by these 4 posts. Word of the leader's death spread to neighboring tribes, who took this as an opportunity for pillaging. But the intellectually advanced Bob-Omb Battlefield tribe knew better than to hide the king's wealth inside the grave. Instead, they cleverly hid the money beneath the bark of the grave marker posts, which has now deteriorated to the point that the wind currents created by simply running circles around the posts causes enough erosion to expose some of the money. Ground pounding causes no erosion, but instead results in anal splinters. The tribe eventually adopted the indigenous chain chomp as their cumulative spirit animal, which has a multi-century-long life expectancy. The massive size of this chain chomp can be explained by the possibility that they come in different breeds. For example, the smaller ones, like in Super Mario 3, might be Chomper Spaniels, and the one here could be a Great Chain. Another possibility is that the star behind the gate has been exposing radiation to the chain chomp for several centuries, giving it gigantic brain tumors. Notice that these Bob-Ombs are pink to stand up for chain chomp cancer. The tribe of Bob-Omb Battlefield considered the Power Stars sacred and tried to protect them from the insatiable greed of rival tribes. But upon releasing the chain chomp, it furiously attacks the star before being stopped by the bars, then experiencing brief unconsciousness, forgets what it's doing, and finally wanders off in search of food and chemotherapy. When the threat of rogue pillagers began increasing, the people of Bob-Omb Battlefield needed a king to turn to, so they rebuilt their leader as an android using similar design to pre-existing Bob-Omb technology, dating back even further. However, their king was defective, much like early releases of the Wii U. Nowadays, the technology behind King Bob-Omb are being carefully examined as he's being remotely controlled through satellites. King Bob-Omb's reception becomes very unstable at or below sea level, so he must remain at high altitudes. You may have noticed many large metal balls being expelled from 2 caves off the mountain path. These metal balls are actually the rejected souls of an astral projection ritual. These caves have been blessed and act as portals to an alternate dimension, where your soul will undergo a rigorous test to be considered worthy of adulthood. You can choose either entrance for a different trial. The bottom entrance leads to the trial of ambitious ascent, while the top entrance leads to the trial of humble descent. Every time Mario warps, he becomes more in tune with his spiritual potential. However, this is not the case for the flower bed warps. This is simply due to Mario being disassembled by the molecular level as he gets caught in the middle of trillions of aggressively pollinating bees and wasps, and then is miraculously reassembled as they migrate to the next flower bed. The cause for the disappearance of the Bob-Omb Battlefield tribe is most likely due to prevalent earthquake activity. The tectonic shifts may have interfered with the magnetic fields, causing reverse gravity effect. But can these magnetic field disturbances account for all the floating objects in the area? No. That wouldn't make sense. A more plausible explanation is that these green rocks are the remains of asteroids that have moved so fast through the atmosphere that the laws of physics could not keep up and have thus maintained their weaker gravitational pull on a planet with much stronger gravitational pull, and as a result, nearby objects are much lighter than they would be if these rocks were not here. Notice that the largest collection of this foreign material is beneath the floating object with the most mass. Of course, this is all just speculation. What we do know is that the ancient civilization harvested this material and used it to take to the air. However, much like gasoline, the green rock is a consumable, finite resource. Some rings of coins can be found in the upper atmosphere, specifically arranged by the ancient tribe to distract greedy outsiders invading from the skies. The coins in the center are laced with a hallucinogen that will make you see positive whole integers sequentially, until eventually you experience paralysis mid-flight before crashing and dying. Mario does not appear to be affected by the hallucinogen because his body has developed a tolerance to toxic material, such as the methane he deals with in the sewers. The green rock is responsible for many of the hovering objects in the area, but there is still one baffling mystery to resolve. Some objects regenerate. There's only one known substance that can flawlessly replicate an object that has been destroyed beyond recognition: the 1-Up mushroom. But what do 1-Up mushrooms have to do with the green rocks? Recent studies suggest the 1-Up mushroom is actually a byproduct of the material. It's a fungus that grows on the rock and extracts some of its properties. There are no shortages of 1-Up mushrooms by any means, but to hold the 3D printing properties of the mushroom combined with the low gravity effects in its rawest form could be of large benefit to medicine. This precious element known as 1-Uptanium is being left here until scientists determine the proper way to handle it without destroying it by mistake. One last thing to note is that Koopas appear to have large difficulty adapting to this area, such as this smaller Koopa that when anything larger than itself approaches, it begins to cry and sweat blood, much like Jesus Christ before his crucifixion. The secreted fluids lubricate its shell enough to slide across almost any surface. And this Koopa, who makes bets with people that he can beat them in a race that he always loses because of his poor cardio, which has landed him deep in debt. He ignorantly convinces himself that the tortoise beat the hare allegory holds merit. That does it for this installment of Video Game Logic Explained, so now Bob-Omb Battlefield makes perfect sense. Thanks for watching. Bing bang goodbye.